Huge Cataclysm Classic Info, scaling raids, Mythic Plus. What?
I'm not going to lie, this news is massive. I've literally just got off a call with Ramus of Everlook, who got a survey about Cataclysm. Now, even if you're not interested in Cataclysm, or you think it's going to be something that you're not going to stick around for, by the end of this video, you might change your mind. I'll include bits of the Discord conversation throughout this because the pictures that I put on screen are going to be all in German, and unless you speak German, you're not going to understand it. I don't know how many other people have got this survey, and whilst no, you're not meant to share it, we're naughty boys. But some of these features are going to be absolutely crazy, and there's many bits in this survey that we're just going to gloss over, so the whole thing won't be included. But some of the things I want to touch on, which are features that aren't necessarily in Cata, but that they're working on or planning on introducing, are things like account-wide mounts and pets, solo shuffle for arenas, world events for more content to do outside of raids, scaling all of the raids up to your level. So you could go and do Blackwing Lair and get DFT, and it'd be level 85 and appropriate.
I'm confused. Where is all this information coming from? Is this from a survey they sent out in German? Is that what he's saying?
Which is mental. Changes to progression and leveling, quest experience, all of that side of things. Even being able to fly from 1 to 80. Ordinarily, you wouldn't have been able to fly around until level 60, when you can get your Flight Master's license, but actually being able to get flying at, let's say, level...
I guess the nice thing about Cata is that nobody's super, like, precious with it, because people already kind of felt like it wasn't the best. It's like you can make changes and people aren't going to be too mad about it, because it's like no one's super precious about it to begin with. I think Cata could be cool.
20 and being able to fly around all of the zones whilst leveling. That's actually a really good change. There's so much more, like improved Heroic Plus, ways to actually find groups, and even Mythic Plus has been mentioned. So let's just jump straight in. The main thing is this slide here.
Him saying it's a good change, it feels disingenuous a little bit to me. Like these guys, and I'm also guilty of this. Like we have an incentive to get people hyped for content because that's where our world is, right? But I'm not sure that these are going to be good changes. I hope they are, but I feel like him just firing from the hip and saying that's actually a good change isn't necessarily the way that people are going to feel, or the way that people are. I don't know.
Which was slide 16, where we're looking at all of the features in Cataclysm, and some of which weren't necessarily introduced back in the day. These could be features from further down the line retail expansions that they think would fit in Cata, and are trying to get our take on whether we think that that would be a good fit or a bad fit. So just breaking down the list, 10 new dungeons, there's no change there. That is just the standard Cataclysm dungeons that will come with the future expansion. 2 new races being Worgen and Goblin, which we absolutely already know about. 5 new raids, and then we get to this one, which would be the first change. So account-wide mounts and pets.
Account-wide mounts and pets. Then we have archaeology.
Hang on. That's interesting. Yeah. What? Account-wide mounts and pets? That weren't in Cata.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people think account-wide mounts and pets came in Cataclysm when it actually didn't. It wasn't actually added until Mr. Pandaria, but it would be a really, really good change in Cataclysm to be able to have access to your mounts, especially when you're going to be able to potentially, which we'll get to in a little bit, be able to fly from 1 to 60.
So the problem, a lot of this stuff the game starts to devolve. And it's already started to, but it starts to become carnival-esque. You know what I mean? Where you like show up, there is a bunch of activities in this little area, and that's what you do, and then boom. Account-wide stuff, there's no reason that it's a problem, but your character loses a little bit of its story. You know what I mean? Like if you make a level 1 warrior and at level 30 you can hop on your bug mount, that doesn't make sense from a story standpoint for your character. You know what I mean? It's like my dwarf priest has a history. It has a pedigree. and random fucking, you know, it just becomes more video game-esque and less like what you've done, what your achievements are. The problem Reshock is like it's inevitable. They're gonna announce Kata before ICC releases. They should.
So it would be like super useful for your ults to have access to all of your mains mounts, obviously. Archaeology we already know about. Then there was a mention of solo queuing for arenas. I don't claim to be a particularly big Dragonflight player. Well, not a Dragonflight.
I'm totally cool with solo queuing for arenas. That's one feature that I don't think impacts anybody negatively at all. I don't PvP a bunch, but I don't think there's anyone that would be like, no, you shouldn't be able to solo queue for arena. You know what I mean? I think that's a fun, interesting activity that you should be able to do. Personally.
Flight player at all. I believe this feature is in currently. Another possible change is the removal of 5v5 in arenas, which I'm not sure how well that would go down with people who enjoy doing 5v5 content. Changes to professions where it gets rid of specializations such as goblin or gnomish engineering, your tailoring specializations, your leatherworking specializations, all of the things that really nowadays have slowly got to a point where they don't matter as much anymore anyway. Don't get me wrong, for engineering, you know, it still matters to be able to use sappers, for example. But actually, when you get into Cataclysm, specializations matter a hell of a lot less, to the point where they pretty much don't matter at all. Class changes we don't need to talk about, but we are going to touch on talent changes soon, which is quite a juicy one. A UI for collectibles, which would very much mimic how it looks in retail, I would imagine, where you actually have like a toys tab where they all go. That would be a great...
If it's an official do not share Blizzard survey, how's he able to make a video about it? This happened before too, and I get confused about it because a bunch of people just posted online about it. So if it's like if it's out, then you're allowed to. If it's sent to you directly and you have an NDA or whatever, then you can't share it. But if it's out, then it's not you that shared it. You can make a video.
Great addition, even a great addition now in Wrath. So the fact that they're thinking about it for Cataclysm is a good thing. And then quite a big one is the improvement to Dungeon Browser. So providing reliable methods to find groups for Heroic Plus and Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus, eh? We're going to get into that more because they do go into a lot more detail about that system and how it would work. And yes, it's called Mythic Plus, or they're sort of talking about it in terms of Mythic Plus, but I would say it's actually more like Gold Challenge modes, which I've spoke about so many times on the channel. The addition of the Dungeon Journal, which, yes, we know what the Dungeon Journal is, and actually it's a very, very good tool. If you're not familiar with what it is, it's this tool here where you can actually have a look at what loot drops, you can look at the boss abilities, you can look at, you know, what abilities are deadly, what you need to look out for.
No, this is real.
Get damage dealer alert, so things that you need to pay attention to for your specific role. And obviously this at the moment would only be for Cataclysm dungeons and raids, but I could really see them branching out and doing it for all content, exactly, on the basis that all raids in Cataclysm could be relevant. Again, there's mention here of the Heroic Plus system, so that would still be in the game. So the Titan dungeons or Titan Rune dungeons, whatever you want to call them, that we do now, with actually variations of those dungeons built up in difficulty. For example, Mythic Plus, again, is mentioned here, and it gives certain rewards.
That builds up on the Titan Rune dungeon as it is now, like Mythic Plus, that's in brackets.
Okay.
And the chance to get new rewards, like...
Okay, so Mythic Plus is something that we've been asking for since like TBC dungeons. And it's something that I really think that they could implement pretty easily. A lot of the time it would just be, hey, add a fucking clock at the beginning of the dungeon. And just doing that will change a bunch of things, right? There's a ton of extra stuff you can do, but just adding that clock does a lot. Because like with Mythic Plus and retail now, like you can gear a character to nearly full bis, right? With just Mythic Plus gear, right? I would be interested to see if they go that route with Cata Classic. If like you don't need to raid to get your gear. That would be a lot of content to like dump into a 5-man, right? And 5-mans in Cata are hard. I say that with a bit of a caveat in that hard, classic's hard, but still, it's like they're harder than we're used to. Yeah, I hope they stay hard. I hands. I don't know. We'll see.
Cosmetics, new color sets, etc.
But it's not going to be gear, which, again, we'll get into. So a better leveling system with rework in 1 to 60 to allow for flying, actually, and improve 60 to 80 to reduce the grinding and how long it takes to actually get into the current content.
Replayability
what
is like
going to look
what
like
we're going
isn't
for.
particularly clear, even when we get later on into the slides. But it feels like they don't want the 60 to 80 to take anywhere near as long as it does, even sort of with all the XP nerfs and everything that come throughout the patches in Cataclysm. I feel like they're going to do something
are harder, but the raids
very
are
different.
a lot harder.
Another interesting one, which would be a new addition, is live events. So invasions, like the AQ events, Scourge invasions, the Elemental invasions, Deathwing related events, just live events that make the world feel alive. Other things that we already know about are the addition of things like AoE looting, improved flight paths, in-game weak auras, but they're not weak auras, it's just those in-game alerts that if you watch my other Cata video that I put out a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. So I'm getting overwhelmed by the amount of stuff, right? And my inner alarm is going off like, oh shit, this is becoming retail, right? And these guys, Metagoblin, no, I know Pummel, but Metagoblin, Skyj, like a lot of them have been like, hey, Cat is great. It's classic, but just with a bunch of like quality of life stuff. But it makes me nervous because it's a fast slurry into retail. Like you just get sucked in and all of a sudden you're playing a different game, which, that's fine for some people. Some people aren't looking for that. And who knows, maybe they go a different route and there's some classic era development or whatever, but I know Hans, but we're here to talk about what we like and don't like from it. So it's like, yes, it's a survey, but we have to take it all seriously and then kind of try to give feedback. So I was saying I was wanting to play some different games, but I still am protective of the game that I have been playing for the last 4 years.
To go actually show you what they look like when you get a proc and stuff like that. So it's just a way to make it really clear when you get an ability that procs that you need to use. They also mentioned the fact that you don't need ammo in your bags as a hunter, for example. Changes to the progression and leveling quest experience.
Okay, let's do something real quick. Wrath Classic survey. Was there a Wrath Classic survey? And then what was in it? Let's look at what was in this one and see how much of this stuff got added. Okay, here. Thank you, Hans. Shown below, mount from Wrath. A new mount from Wrath. The mount alchemy skills are the fastest riding skill. Did we get a mount? There was one in TBC, but I don't think we got one for Wrath. Oh, we did. It was that dumb Kaluak thing. Yeah, but it doesn't go fast, right? Character transfer. This service allows you to move characters. Okay, that's in. This is just for the bundle, Hans. It's not 310. Yeah, I feel like is it a ground mount? Oh, it's both. Okay. All right.
Sure, this is referring more to the fact that it's a very much more linear experience in terms of questing, where you go to a zone, you get a few quests, you go and do those quests, you go back and hand it.
What dungeon is this? So this is Grim Patrol, which is kind of in wetlands, right? Off to the right. Yeah.
And it's very much like Wrath sort of leveling experience rather than actually the original vanilla leveling experience. They mentioned the looking for raid tool, but we won't talk about that. Rated battlegrounds are added as well, which we know about. Reforging would be added in the pre-patch, again, which we know about. Repeatable content in the open world, like rare bosses, invasions, world events. This is an interesting one, and world events, I feel like, in the past in WoW, have actually gone down pretty well. And on the most part, do add like a bit of fun content to go and do, even if it's to get a little bit of gold or there's certain currency that you can get from certain world events. I think seeing world events in Cataclysm is not something I've ever thought about before, but that would be a really good move, just because of the ability to fly all around Azeroth, Eastern Kingdoms, Kalimdor, and then you're going to have these world events popping up all over the place where you can go and do, maybe you're encouraged to do a couple of them a day or whatever, whether it is for a currency or it's for gold, or some of them give honor, some of them give justice points, like whatever.
The problem with, at least for me, is that none of the rewards for something like that seem worth it. For me, the best world events Blizzard's ever done are world bosses. And the fact that they drop loot that you can only get from the world boss, and they are BIS. It makes world bosses way, way, way more interesting. Exactly, Hans. That's a good point. Yeah, the AQ opening, that's a good one. I'll give you that. That's a really good one. These are all things that you could like be like, oh, they're very good, and I want to work towards getting them. I loved world bosses in vanilla, but maybe it's just not feasible with the current state of the servers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea and the perfect setting for it, purely because of how big the zones are. Talent changes, which we're going to get into, because actually they allude to something pretty cool in this section. The addition of Tolbarad, the addition of Transmog, the unified loot across 10 and 25 man, which again, that's
No
perfectly
transmog.
normal.
Down
we know
with
you can only
transmog.
get loot from 10 or 25, but they do drop the same loot. But this is the big one. Rework of old raids, so they're still challenging to your level when you're 85. So literally every raid could be relevant.
There is 0 chance they're able to do this effectively. 0. There is no way that you can buff an old raid with the size of the team that they have and have it, 1, be difficult, 2, be worth your time. There's just no way. If they hire people and want to do it, great. I'm totally for it. But my feeling is that's not going to be a thing that they're able to do. Maybe they crowdsource the number crunching. There's no way to do that.
Well, not Zolgaro, because that's going to be a 5-man heroic. That was a bad example. You could go do AQ. You could go and do Nax. You could go and do Ulduar. You can go and do all of these dungeons, and they're all going to be scaled up to be relevant.
Oracle?
I mean, that's mental. Like, I mean, good luck making BIS lists. You know, because there will be weird things that we find, but there'll be items that have got procs on that are going to be useful now. Like, that adds so much. I mean, that sounds like a lot of work, like Blizzard's end, which makes me think that they've probably been working on this for quite a while, and they've been thinking about doing this for quite a while. But that's mega. And the fact that you can only do 10 or 25 man of a specific raid means you can go and do 25 man in all current content, and then if you're bored, get a 10 man together.
It just doesn't make sense.
Let's go do, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
if they're actually all tuned for 10 and 25 man as well, and drop level 85 gear, that is bonkers. So that's something that I am really excited to see how that plays out. And I mean, if there was any closed alpha test in Blizzard and you're watching this, get me involved. And then they basically have you go through some of these changes and they group them together, and you have to pick which one you would like and which one you wouldn't like, and then you go through a few slides.
Maybe you see recognize the feature names. You just get like always 4 feature names, and then you on the left hand side you must mark 1 to say that's like most interesting of the 4, and on the right hand side that is least interesting of those 4 mentioned.
So now the new stuff, whilst there's not tons of details on any of it, we can pretty much pick it apart and work out roughly what it all means. So improved dungeon browser firstly. The heroic dungeons will be based on the Titan rune dungeons, and they'd give rewards based on what Titan rune you're activating the dungeon with. But then
that would be great. That would be great. I would love something like that where you can activate modifiers and get good loot, and I would love that. And that seems like not out of the possibility of doable for them. I've been burned before. But it makes me nervous.
Then when you get to the certain difficulty, the loot will not scale. So you can only ever get this type of loot. But you can unlock higher difficulties, which will provide greater challenges and more options, but play no part of the gearing progression. So this means
oh my God, we have to fight Vezax
there will be
again?
content that you can do that's difficult and unlocks other options for more difficult content, but it gives you no items in as a reward. You might get a title, you might get a tabard, you might get a mount, like whatever. You know, I'm sure there will be things added that you get, but cosmetics. I mean, it sounds like gold challenge modes, don't it? And that's perfect. This is what I've been saying all along. Adding content that doesn't need, like, not all content needs to give player power. Doesn't, like, you can have fun and do challenging content with no gear reward. It can be purely for something cosmetic or purely for bragging rights, just to say, I've done this. I mean, that's amazing. They mention again about the introduction of invasions and world events to go and do. So basically, world events, if you've ever done world events in retail or in past retail expansions, around the same sort of vein. So the events is to be able to relive events in Warcraft history. So they'll rework things like the AQ gate opening events, Deathwing events, the Elemental and Scourge invasions, all of those things that have happened
Tight,
that have been and gone, and they were really good. You know,
Fucking
everyone remembers running around doing all the Scourge invasions when it was, you know, during the pre-patch, you know, before the expansion. And once that's gone, there's no way of ever doing it again. So now it looks like they might be bringing some of these.
Tight.
Holy fuck,
fucking
dude.
tight. Good.
Thank you for the 120 subs, dude. Thank you so much. Thank you, dude. That was tight. That was fucking tight. Thank you, man. You made my day. I appreciate it.
Iconic things back and making them relevant, maybe throughout the entire expansion, is what I would hope. That's not to say that we want to see the invasions going on 24 hours a day, but if it was like on a weekly cycle where each week it's a different type of event that's going on, that'd be absolutely insane. They also go on to talk more about the arena solo queue, also the improved loot from old raids. They even give a specific example of DFT at level 85, which gives the incentive to go and do old raids.
DFT is like still good. If it was percent based, yeah, hands new.
It's more content to consume, and they even say that you could just go and do it for fun. So you can tell how excited I am about that. They also talk about improvements to the leveling system, so the fact that, yes, 1 to 60 would be reworked with the ability to fly, possibly. Remember, this is just a survey. This doesn't mean this is what the game's going to look like, but it gives you a good idea on what they're thinking and how they're thinking about Cataclysm. And I feel like they're thinking about Cataclysm in the right ways. They're thinking about it in a way that, how do we provide much more content so we don't get to a point like we have in Wrath where people are raid logging so quickly or complaining that there's nothing to do. Like this, you'd have challenging PvE content in 5-mans to do in the form of the challenge modes. You could go and raid pretty much all day long if they really did release all.
That's exactly what Hands wants.
Content.
Raid all day long.
It would just be mental amounts of content, which give it to me now. And again, they mentioned about the fact of making 60 to 80 easier and less grinding to get to current content. One last one to leave you with, which is a massive one, and I mean massive. Talent tree rework, but without the changes that Cat brought into them. So I asked this, you take from that, so reading it in your like native language, would that mean to you don't need to put 31 points in one tree before you go to the other?
That would be my take on it. Yeah, you will be. I think you will get smaller or whatever, I don't know, but yeah, that would be my takeaway from that. I don't need to go down to the last talent in my tree to pick up the other ones, and that would be like open up like really crazy stuff, right? Because halfway through there's like the big thing always, right?
Yeah, because trying to translate from German to English perfectly, you know, there are going to be things that sometimes don't quite make sense, you know, in a sentence. So I wanted to get his opinion really on what do you think, you know, in your native language, reading it, how would you take that?
I don't even know what to make of that.
Takes it the same way as me, that actually the restriction would be lifted to go 31 points deep in a talent tree before you branch out to others. So you could do some crazy builds. You know, crazy builds.
It's like P server stuff, man. You're getting into like fucking dev tool crazy shit. I don't know. All right. So I'm a little bit incredulous, suspicious, unsure of a lot of the things that I heard about this. It's easy for me to say this because I'm still gonna play it. I gotta get Blizzard to make a game good enough that Hands will play it.